Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying the videos we're producing here at LCARA, please help our club out by hitting that subscribe button. Also, give us some feedback on our videos. Click the like button, share with anybody who may find it interesting, and be sure and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified of the next video release. Hello folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP, and today we want to take a fairly brief look, a fairly brief overview of software-defined radio, SDR, software-defined radio. And I want to cover the basics of this at least, and show you the kind of equipment that I'm using, and also talk about an online alternative that you can use as you get started, maybe even in conjunction with a setup you've already got. So you should be able to see the SDR Uno program, which I use with my piece of hardware, which is the RSP1 Alpha unit from SDR Play. This is maybe one of the more expensive units on the market. There are definitely cheaper alternatives, little USB sticks and things, and some of those can give you some interesting capabilities, no doubt about it. This is the unit I decided to go with, and I'll put a picture, maybe a couple of pictures of the unit I have. I did get a replaceable external metal case, aluminum case for my unit. They normally ship with a plastic case, which really was fine, was really not a problem. But I just kind of like the look of the metal case, and it was available right there on Amazon. And so I'm using the RSP1 Alpha. SDR Play has several units available for purchase, some dual capable units. In fact, they just released a fairly new one that's dual inputs. This is a single input, but it works well for me, and I feel like it's a great addition to my radio. Now, my radio, my primary HF radio here in the shack right now, is actually a mobile radio. It's actually a Yaesu FT891, which is actually a really great little radio. Now, it's certainly not a 991A or ICOM 7300 or any of the even bigger time radios that are out there that can cost $5, $10, $15,000. But it's a really nice little radio. It's 100 watts. It has a nice little screen on the front, but it doesn't have a lot of the fancy stuff. It doesn't have a color screen, doesn't have built-in waterfalls and things like that. So it's a nice radio, and made plenty of great contacts with it. In fact, just reached out and was able to snag Australia a couple days ago. I've hit deep into Russia, and I've heard all around the United States from the West Coast and over here more towards where I am, towards the East Coast, and down into Brazil, and so I've been making some pretty good contacts around the world, even though the bands are dead, and even though we're at the low part of the cycle, sunspot cycle. But having an SDR unit to be able to use in conjunction with this radio, really, it comes to the point for me where I don't even care what my radio is anymore. My interface, if you will, has become the SDR. And I'm running this on a 27-inch monitor. So my radio has a 27-inch screen. It's not a touch screen, but of course I have my mouse and keyboard around to work on things. So we're going to be diving into just some overview of, again, SDR, and in particular the SDR Uno software, using that with the RSP1 Alpha piece of hardware from SDR Play. There's a lot of options out there, but I do want to bring in a web browser here, and I just wanted to show this for a minute. I'll unmaximize that. I just want to show this for a minute. This is just websdr.org, and I did want to make sure folks were aware of this as well. I started here, in fact, and the nice thing about this is a website that has collected links for people that have purchased SDR units of one brand or another and made them available for use and control over the internet. So you can come here, you can put in your area of the world, and you can find SDRs relatively close to you, sometimes very close, depending on where you live. And then you can start to see the benefits of SDR, and you can actually use those. You can hear radio streams. In fact, let's see if we can find something. Let's go to the 40-meter band for North America, and one that's relatively close to me is this one here, kind of in the middle of the screen. I'll try to highlight that. Milford, Pennsylvania. I would use it to help me spot activity and spot frequencies that I might want to go check out with my radio. And these are available for free. Now, again, it may not be exactly what you can hear, and I did see discrepancies with different ones as far as, there were times they could hear things that I couldn't hear, or I was hearing things that they weren't showing. But it was kind of a nice addition to help round out my radio, since my radio isn't one of the fancier ones. And it was a free resource, and it was kind of fun to play with. I don't know if we're on a good signal. Let's unmute for just a minute, see what we can hear maybe. Sounds like we're not quite on a frequency. Might check that radio out.
Technology background and working with equipment, routers and switches and all that stuff. I think it's probably a good thing to want to come on the market probably for about 6 months and see if there's any.
We won't spend a whole lot of time there. I just wanted to show this off. WebSDR.org. Let's go back to the introductory screen there. I just want to show that off as a resource. If you've not seen that or used that, you might want to check that out before you dive into the world of SDR. I think a lot of people do, and I know I did before I picked up the unit. So again, we're back and we're looking at SDR Uno. This is the official front end for the SDR Play hardware that they sell. And I think it's a pretty good front end piece of software. There are some others you can use. Once you buy an SDR, there's usually going to be several options for software that you could use as the front end to that piece of hardware. This is just the official one, and I think it's again a pretty good one. And it's fairly customizable. It's not infinitely customizable, but it's fairly customizable. I've done a few things here with it. I just want to point out some of the aspects of this. Now, there's a lot of great videos online on this software, and in fact, one of them is from the manufacturers of this. There's a guy named Mike who's here in the U.S. He's part of their support staff, and he's done a whole series of great videos. I go and watch his videos and rewatch those videos, so I highly recommend those. And there's plenty of other videos as well. So I just want to kind of do a quick overview. Now, this is not how this would come up initially. I've customized this a little bit as far as which panels I want to see and what proportion I want them to be. A lot of the panels, as you can see here, you can resize the panels and put them in different locations, how you might want to see things. To me, the main thing I want to get out of this is the waterfall and the ability to switch frequencies and the main control panel. It does have a scanning option in the upper left-hand corner. Hopefully you can see there a scanning option. And there's memory settings you can bring up. I don't use everything. I'm slowly diving deeper and deeper into the software, and as they add new features, in fact, version 2.0 should be relatively close to release, probably the first quarter next year. This is 1.3.x. But it's a pretty nice piece of software. But one of the things I like about it is I can switch frequencies at the click of a button. So we just switched over to the 80 meters. If you can see right there, the 80 meters has the kind of an orange highlight to it. So we're now looking at 80 meters. If you look at the bottom of the waterfall, you can see that there are some activity showing for 80 meters. You can see a few little spikes. Of course, it's sort of the middle of the day right now, so it's not prime time for 80 meters, but we're still seeing a little something. And of course, we were on 40 meters. And we definitely see some activity here for 40 meters. In fact, if we click on one of these relatively strong ones, you should be able to hear. So we can hopefully hear that a little bit. Got some folks talking. And we'll mute that again for a minute. There's several strong stations right at the moment, probably some nets going on. We can switch over to 20 meters. And again, give the waterfall just a minute to kind of start showing the activity on the new band. Not seeing a whole lot on 20 meters. Now, one of the things I've discovered with these is Even though this is coming off the same antenna I use for my radio, this is coming off that DX Commander antenna we did the videos on earlier, and it works great. It's a great antenna. I've got 5 elements on it: 6 meters, 10 meters, 20, 40, and 80. And I can sometimes I can get some 15 and 17 meter activity with the elements I've got currently. So I've still got one position free I could put something on. If I can figure out how to squeeze 160 meters on my lot, some sort of inverted L or something, I'm going to do that. But we're looking at 20 meters. Got a little bit of activity, looks like, down there. But I like that we can check different frequencies very, very quickly. Now, of course, you can change frequencies on your radio, and you can spin the dial, and I do that, and we've all done that, and we all do that. But you can check. We're seeing the entire band with this SDR, with my computer, which is a fairly powerful laptop. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, it's not really working too hard. You know, we're kind of seeing the CPU and stuff, and it's not working too hard. But we can switch these bands very quickly, see the entire band in one view. And I don't have to use the entire screen for this. This is just how I wanted to set it up, because I do run more than one monitor because of my work. But it makes it kind of nice because I can dedicate an entire screen to this, and it will actually show some of the other software I use simultaneously with my radio as we finish out this series. I really like that. You can switch it. So depending on what your antenna is capable of, you can check things. Now I usually come up here and check 160 meters. I don't usually pull anything in. I don't have an element dedicated to that. 630, 2300. Sometimes you'll see spikes and things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's normal traffic or that you're really going to pull much of anything in to understand it. And here in the top bands, we have a bands button. We go to the upper bands, 12 meters. I don't have a dedicated 12 meter element. Don't really tend to catch much there. I could put one up. 10 meters. I need to adjust my 10 meters. Every now and then I'll get something on 10 meters, but it's if something's not quite right with that one. And then 6 meters. I do have a 6 meter element. And occasionally I'll get some 6 meters. You know, the so-called magic band. I've actually talked to New York and Canada from where I live. The first day I put it up, caught a contest and caught some folks, and haven't caught a whole lot since. But I check it, and even 2 meters. Even though I don't have a dedicated 2 meter element for this setup, when a local repeater is people are talking on the local repeater, I can hear stuff on 2 meters, and probably could on 1.25 or 70 centimeters if those were busy as well. And then the other part of this is you can actually go into the broadcast areas. I can actually pick up FM radio, AM radio. You can get air bands. There's a lot you can do depending on the SDR unit that you purchase and the kind of antenna that you have. There's a lot you can potentially do. I'm not going to play any FM or AM broadcast because that's protected content, and those folks don't want that redistributed on YouTube. But I'll check on those occasionally, and you can hear radio from other countries, which is kind of cool. From the Middle East or from South America or wherever, you can hear radio stations from a lot of other countries, hear the accents and the kind of music and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of neat for that. So yeah, you can pick up broadcast signals. The regular ham bands, of course, we'll go back to 40 meters. We had a little bit of activity there, seemed like. Give us a little something to look at there. So for me, it's a great addition to my radio. There's really nothing wrong with my radio, and I was mentioning a minute ago, my radio is actually far more sensitive than the SDR is, even though they're coming off the same antenna at the same time. We'll get into that the full setup that I use with the other software and as we go through this series. Even though they're doing that, and it's great because I can spot these activities, like we see in the waterfall right now. We can spot this activity, um, and I can go and I could listen to that on the radio. But what I have found is my radio is more sensitive. So there are times where I'm hearing somebody decently on the radio and I don't see anything on the SDR. I mean, nothing. And yet I'm still hearing people on the radio. So I use this SDR and this waterfall for the SDR. It's kind of pretty to look at. Gives me something more interesting to watch than just the front of my radio. And of course, it's much larger. I don't think any radio has a screen this big built in yet anyway. Some of those new ones have some pretty big screens though. But it's used to augment what I can do on the radio. I don't just sort of trust it or rely on this because I know that my radio is more sensitive, and I'll still find things sometimes that aren't showing on the SDR. But I think it's a really great addition. You can see there's a fair amount of digital traffic down here in some of the lower parts of the band. So we have some of that going on. We got some, again, some single sideband traffic. Again, probably some nets and some things happening. I would suspect this is a, a Thursday. It's kind of middle of the day. A lot of people are at work, of course. Um, so probably some nets and some things. Maybe some retired folks. But that's what I like about the SDR. You can change bands very quickly. You can see what's happening. To me, it's a great augmentation to the radio you've already got. Now, again, this can do a lot. You can see up here, we can listen to AM, we can listen to FM, of course, CW, the digital modes, you can listen to them. And it'll help you spot things very quickly. And there's adjustments, there's notch filters. So I just wanted to have an overview of this. I think it's a great augmentation to having your radio. And again, AM, FM, foreign stations, um, all the HF bands, and even lower. Again, you can go to the upper stuff. You can go to again. There's times where I can hear 2 meters pretty much clear as a bell when it's a station that's active and relatively close to me. I've hit 6 meters before. So whatever your antennas can handle, whatever's active in your area, or if you just like to listen to, again, you can listen to airband traffic, you can listen to AM stations, FM stations, whatever's of interest to you, and it's got filtering and all kinds of things you can get into with it. So. I just want to make this a quick introduction to the capabilities here, show the pictures of the unit that I have, the RSP1 Alpha. And again, there's a lot of units out there. Some of them are fairly inexpensive, 15, 20, $30 a piece. Little dongles, stick in your USB port, put up a simple little antenna with them. Can get you started. The web SDR is out there as well. But I think it's really cool. You can change bands very quickly and have a lot of fun visually as well as being able to listen to things. And then as we get into the series, we'll talk about the other software. And in the final part, we'll talk about how I can actually interactively work with my radio. And I think that really pulls it all together. So I think it's a great way to kind of maybe get into the hobby, begin to listen to things, listen to how people do calls, listen to how they call CQ, how they run a pileup. We all have to be new sometime. I mean, kind of hear how other people do that, how they handle that. And before we click on that microphone, once we're licensed and we're ready to go. So, a pretty brief a preview of this. Again, there's a ton of features in this software already, and they're continuing development on it all the time. Again, you can set up the scanner here in the upper left is where I have that panel. You can arrange these panels however you want to. This is just how I tend to run it. And you can set it and have it scan, have it scan 40 meters, and you can put the start and the end range of the scan and have it listen for signals. You can again, there's memory channels, memory banks that you can set up in there, and you can go to those if there's radio stations you like to check in on and listen to, the air bands, whatever it is. And there's even lists that are already published for a lot of those things. So I just want to show an introduction to this and mostly bring up the topic of software-defined radio, that whether you are brand new, whether you're not even licensed yet, it can be a way to check out the hobby, see if it seems interesting to you, sounds interesting to you. Web SDR or one of the pretty inexpensive dongles could let you get started, let you start listening to things. And then you may decide, okay, maybe I do want to take the next step. Maybe I want to get my license, get my technicians or general or amateur extra license, and get out there on the various airwaves and actually interact with folks. So, just wanted to kind of show this off because I think it's an area that can it's a little bit newer. It's not brand new by any means, but it's a little bit newer, and it's an area that I think people don't always think about. And I think part of that could be because we may not always realize there can be a benefit to it. If you actually have your license and a radio already, you may not see much of a benefit to SDR. And there's a point there. For me, it's a great augmentation to having my license and having a radio. So that's what we wanted to show off here. Now we're going to be talking about some logging software next. And I'll show off the logging software that I use, which is called Log4, the number 4 OM. And there's a couple of different loggers that are pretty similar to that. And we'll talk about what that sort of brings to the table. And then the final segment is probably going to show how I can actually use the SDR Uno with my SDR radio, the logging software, and a couple of other little bits of software, and interactively use and control my rig with all these pieces of software all at once, and have manual control of my rig and software control of my rig. And again, when we talk about changing bands, when with my setup, as we'll get into in the final segment, when I change bands, it automatically changes it on my radio, right? So it just kind of speeds up your ability to look at things and check on things, and hopefully have more fun using the radio and talking to folks, and spend maybe less time trying to find somebody to even click the mic, and to get your logging done quickly with the logging software I have. When I find a contact and I put the information in there, and I can hit enter, and it automatically uploads it to my log. I use QRZ for my log right now, but if you're using Logbook of the World, or EQSL, whatever, it can automatically upload into those. So it can really streamline and simplify the process, and again, hopefully give us more time to spend actually in QSLs, having QSOs. So we're going to wrap it up for this one for the SDR Uno software. It's very customizable. They're still developing it. New features, new capabilities are coming out all the time. And again, you don't have to run it full screen like I do, but you could alt tab between a couple of different programs if you have a single monitor. If you have a couple of monitors, you might put this on one of them, and it just gives you a nice big screen to augment whatever you've got with your radio. So we're going to wrap this one up. We'll be bringing out Log4OM as the next segment, and then talk about how you can actually use little programs, things like OmniRig, to interactively work with your radio with these programs. So that'll be it for software-defined radio. Just an introduction, just to let folks know that it's out there and see a little bit about what you can do. See how you can have a nice, big, beautiful screen with it. You can listen with it, and to more than just UHF, VHF, and HF radio. FM radio, AM radio, air bands, all that kind of stuff is out there. So this is Chris, KY4CKP, for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, and 73.